Yeah, first question, Aaron. Yeah, what's your impression of the scoopcamp 2010?
It's been a lot of fun. scoopcamp's been a lot of fun for me so far. I'm amazed that you're able to bring this many technologists and journalists under one roof at an event like this. It's really impressive to see this many smart people all in the same place. And we've had a lot of really interesting conversations about the web and web development and news applications so far. So it's been great.
It's like it's an interesting mixture of people here from all different kind of jobs. How does the discussion work together? Is it working out fine?
Yeah, I mean, we just got done with a workshop on building web applications, and so the room is a mixture of both journalists and developers and folks who work in the technology industry, and so the combination has been really helpful. I think we have found that there's a lot of shared sort of understanding of what makes a good web application and how to bring this into the newsroom and how to use these technologies to tell better stories and enrich our reporting online. So it's been really interesting to see how these people, how people communicate with one another.
Interesting, maybe a basic question, but maybe not all our viewers know what we actually understand with data journalism. Could you explain in a few sentences what actually this term means, data journalism?
Data journalism means a lot of things to a lot of people, and I guess from my point of view anyway, it sort of describes a series of techniques and technologies that journalists have actually been bringing into newsrooms for actually decades now. Most recently, I think we're using it to describe technologies and techniques that apply to the web. But going back into the 80s, 70s, and 60s, journalists were experimenting with things like statistical analysis and GIS and other technologies a long time ago. But the web, I think, adds a dimension that those other technologies do not, which is that it allows us to bring the analysis and that data right to our users and present it in a way that allows a user to, or a reader, to construct their own narrative and to see how we've come to the conclusions we've come to and what our reporting is based on. That's really powerful, particularly now in a very crowded media landscape online.
What do you think is the mainstream user? Is he interested in numbers, statistics, studies? Doesn't he want to have a story just presented in a kind of closed storytelling kind of way?
Well, that's the beauty of the web, is that we can provide all of those things to all users. We can really be everything to everybody. That for the user, the reader who just wants the story, the narrative, the sort of traditional broadcast, we can provide that. But additionally, we can, at no extra charge, we can provide the data. We can provide this sort of deeper, richer experience. That's where the power of the web really adds to our arsenal, what we can bring to storytelling and to narrative journalism.
What's more important for you, the let's say information architecture or the web design? You've had a few examples in your keynote, and well, sometimes I had the impression, well, aesthetic is important, of course. You know, sometimes you said the numbers are more important. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I see good web development in this context of journalism to be a marriage, actually, between information architecture, design, and content. Without any of those three, you're lost. Your website's going to be a mess. It won't look good. It won't look like something people are going to want to read and engage with, or the content itself will be so thin that people will just simply navigate away. So of those three, though, I would say that information architecture and design, I think, are equally important initially, at least initially, because you have so little time to interest a reader, so little time to engage them in your interactive, that you simply need to have it structured in a way that brings those key points right to the front and does it in an engaging way. So I would say of those three, interactive or information architecture and design are probably the first thing I look for as we're contemplating, as we're building out an application. It's like, how are we going to structure this information in the best possible way? And then we look to add content as needed to tell the story.
They intend to earn money with this section in the company. Is this actually possible to earn money with data journalism?
Data journalism does open up the possibility, new possibilities for additional revenue streams. We're on the news side, so that's not really what we do, but we have experimented at the Times with syndication, with other ways of potentially earning revenue. I will say this though, when you have a team that's building unique interactives that you find nowhere else on the web, that's a very attractive vehicle for advertisers to sponsor you and to place very high value ads on your site. That's happened to a number of the sites that we've built, have attracted big sponsors. So I think that there's definitely revenue potential there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. How are the click rates on your data sites?
We don't really discuss web metrics publicly, but in broad strokes, the data sites that are sort of data-driven, they range the gamut. I mean, we have sites that are incredibly immersive, and we have, average times on site in the, 4, 6, 8, even 12-minute range, which is pretty amazing for a website. And we have others that I think, don't do as well. But it's all over the board, and I think, again, it very much depends on what story you're trying to tell and how you tell it.
Will the journalist of the future must he be able to program after all?
I don't think every journalist needs to program. And my answer to that question typically is no, they don't need to learn to program, but they do need to know what's possible on the web. And everybody says that. You need to know what's possible. But what does that mean? What does that exactly mean? What's possible to me means that you have a fundamental understanding of how the web works, what web standards are, how a client-server technologies work, how data works into these applications. You really need to have a fairly deep knowledge of how the web works in order to truly know what's possible, quote unquote. So you don't need to necessarily be a programmer to learn that. In fact, there are companies, technology companies all around the world where you have non-programmers in highly technical positions. But how did they get that way? Through learning. And one of the easiest ways for journalists to learn, in my mind, is to program. But it's only one way to get there. I think it's the way. I think it has additional uses. I learned to program, for example, as part of my reporting. It added to my ability to deepen the journalism that I was doing.
Okay, can I ask this question? I thought you were a journalist first and then became a programmer. Did I get that right?
Well, okay, let's be clear about this. I'm a journalist first, and a programmer, I would say, is a very distant second. I do programming, but I would be very reluctant to define myself as a quote-unquote programmer. And all the people who see my source code would probably agree with that. But yeah, I mean, this is mostly what I do now is development of some kind.
Okay, you said in your keynote that there wasn't an event in the United States you could think of that brings together journalists and developers as the scoopcamp does. Is that right, actually?
Well, there's no event that I'm aware of that's quite like scoopcamp, in the sense that you are deliberately thoughtfully bringing technologists and journalists together to engage in a conversation about the web and these technologies. And there are organizations like the Online News Association, Investigative Reporters and Editors, National Institute of Computer System Reporting, and so forth, that do parts of that, but there's no single event that I know of that brings folks together in quite the same way. So that's what I mean by when I say that scoopcamp is somewhat unique.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, one last question. Of course, I have to ask it. What do you think about Hamburg, Aron?
I'll tell you once I see something other than my hotel.